Bangladesh don't tour well for T20s. This is a list of all the teams in this tournament who have played 10 home and away games in the last 5 years. And now I'm showing you how much better they are at home than they are away. You'll see that Pakistan is the worst, but that's only because they have a 2.6 win-loss ratio at home. They're still good when they travel, just nowhere near that good. Whereas Bangladesh at home have a 1.6 ratio, and when they're away, a 0.466 ratio. They win one game for every 2 losses on the road. No teams play enough T20 internationals, and also teams very rarely play with full strength teams, so it's hard to get too much information out of that. But here's the weird thing about their away record. When they travel, they're actually a much better batting side than when they're at home. And being that they lose in those away games, and they have a reputation for being pretty good at home, you wouldn't really expect this to be the case. And let me point out another team on this list. New Zealand. You can see them at the back of the list and the front. That's a far bigger differential than Bangladesh. But what the Kiwis are doing makes sense. At home, the Kiwis are the fastest scoring team in the world, and away from home, they're the slowest. That's pretty extreme, but at least understandable. And the Kiwis obviously lose more away from home as well. But Bangladesh lose more away from home, while being nearly a run and over quicker with their scoring, and even averaging more when they're on the road. It's actually kind of remarkable. And when I found all this, I started thinking a lot about Bangladesh's batting, because not only are they slow in general, but they're massively quicker when they're away from home. It's a wide margin, and you do have to wonder how all this occurred. And when you look at home and away combined, the only teams slower and worse with the bat than Bangladesh at this tournament are Oman and Sri Lanka. It is fair to say that in T20 Bangladesh really struggled to bat. And you could see it when they lost to Scotland, and even when they beat Oman. Their top order chews up balls at a remarkable rate, and they don't seem to develop late order hitters at all. But playing T20 in Bangladesh is simply not like playing anywhere else. You could argue that playing in New Zealand at least teaches you many of the skills that you need for T20. I'm not sure that's quite the case with Bangladesh. And this tournament was supposed to be played in Australia or India, depending on how you look at it. And you can see them both here. Well, Bangladesh is way down here. So you can see how different it is from most T20 locations. But this is the funny bit. The only 2 places anything like Bangladesh in terms of Asian conditions where no one can score or stay in are Oman, which is where Bangladesh was just playing, and UAE, which is where the rest of the tournament will be played. For a team who wasn't good enough to automatically qualify, that's quite some boost. And it's not even their only advantage for this tournament. While many of the other teams were faffing about in warm-up games that no one took that seriously, Bangladesh have had 3 proper games. Even losing to Scotland is a nice wake-up, because they still went through to the next round and it doesn't really matter. There's a part of me that thinks that this might be their best chance of doing very well at a World Cup. But a few years ago I actually thought that they might get better at T20 anyway, and that was when the Bangladesh Premier League was being talked about within T20 circles as a surprisingly good competition. At that point, a lot of money was coming in from the owners, and players were skipping the Big Bash to compete. Not all the owners were incredible, but there were a few very modern thinking, and it felt like a league going somewhere. Until the BCB took over the league, because I'm still not really sure why. It's too soon to know what effect this might have had, but the free market was moving Bangladesh cricket into a new era, and the BCB certainly shifted it back, or at least sideways. Googlies, quarter seamer, carom, dukes, back of the hand, red, leg cutters, teesra, pink, knuckle, white, slider, seed, heavy, bouncers, cherry, length, pill, off cutters, old, Crimson Traveller, Kookaburra, Hard, Outswing, Second New, Off Spin, Arm, SG, Split Finger, Shiny, Leg Spin, Soft, New, Yorkers, Flippers, Wrong-uns, Long Hops, Reverse Swing, Half Volley, and Third New. These are just some of the names we use for balls in cricket. Well, Manscaped wants you to be as proud of your balls as you are of the ones delivered by your favourite cricketer. Manscaped just launched their 4th generation trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0. Join over 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer, 20% off and free worldwide shipping. Insert the code REDINKA at manscaped.com. I've actually used this, not just something that I'm hawking for fun, and I got to admit, I thought it was a bit silly, and then I went down there and it was exceptional. I honestly feel I could bowl outswing with one nut and inswing with the other. So get 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code REDINKA at manscaped.com. Manscaped, for the man who cares about his balls as much as the ones out in the middle. Not to mention that they started talking about bizarre quotas, like telling every team to pick a leg spinner. It didn't seem they were really understanding what was needed, just what was missing. And they wanted to be in charge and thought their ideas were better than a collection of people who had invested their money. And I don't know, maybe they're right. But regardless of who has been in charge, the same problem persists. Bangladesh batters don't make runs in T20. This is the top 200 run scorers in all T20 cricket over the last 5 years, from highest to lowest strike rate. The Bangladesh batters are in green. I mean, I thought they would be low, but this is comically bad. There is another problem with this, of course, just how few Bangladeshi players are actually on this list in the first place. And that's because they don't play in franchise cricket around the world, because most of them are seen as slow coaches. And the best way of looking at this chart is something that Cricket Greek wrote years ago about working out different types of batters for T20. If you draw a couple of lines across this, you'll have 4 types of batters. Top left is the strike rotators, who are usually middle order players. Bottom right is the boundary hitters, who are usually death or power play specialists. Bottom left is the guns, who hit boundaries while not facing many dot balls at all. And then top right is the slow batters. Some of them are anchors, but some of them are just slow. The green dots are the Bangladesh players. You can see almost none hit boundaries. Few rotate the strike, and most of them chew up scenery like, I don't know, Nicolas Cage in a straight-to-video movie. And it's worth noting that the BPL itself is such a slow-scoring league, and that's where most of these batters play. In the last 5 years, they've had 4 tournaments, and only one of them has been scored at over 8 runs and over. Of the major T20 tournaments around the world, there have been 29 seasons, and 8 of those have had years scoring under 8 runs, and 3 of those are BPL seasons. The PSL can be slow, even the CPL. But the BPL is almost always slow, which is the main difference. So we know that Bangladesh conditions are slow through their international pitches and the BPL. So that's probably why all their batters look slow. But this thing I'm showing now is a collection of batters in the BPL over the years who have scored more than 400 runs in the league. The red dots are overseas players, and the green is Bangladesh players. Just allow me to take a big intake of air here. All the quick batters are overseas, all the slow batters are local. I mean, not exactly, but kinda? So it doesn't quite follow that the Bangladesh players' figures were depressed by their local pitches, because that's not happening when the overseas players play there. I think the more likely scenario is that growing up on these kinds of wickets right across Bangladesh stops players from learning how to play shots freely. We've heard similar things from green tops in England and New Zealand over the years. And of course the Bangladesh team doesn't tour well. They're playing a version of T20 that virtually no one else does. And yet their local conditions have created one of the game's first great all-rounders in Shakib Al Hasan, and given us the unicorn of Mustafizur Rahman. But it's also just produced a whole bunch of blokes who cannot score fast. But in what already looks like an incredibly slow tournament. In fact, right at the moment, it's the lowest scoring tournament in World Cup history. But it's very early. However, the IPL that was played here was also incredibly slow, as were the World Cup qualifiers here. All those factors actually help Bangladesh. I don't think that means they're going to win the tournament, or maybe even get that close. But it might mean that outside of them hosting another event, they'll never get a better chance at it. This already looks like it's going to be a low-scoring World Cup, and Bangladesh is the low-scoring T20 team. But yet, after 4 games, and having played no teams who automatically qualified for the second round, they have a 2-2 record. Looking at the early form of Australia, South Africa and the West Indies, a spot in the semi-finals looks slightly more open now. It still is, but perhaps for Sri Lanka, who are another slow-scoring team. This was a big game for Bangladesh to lose.